At exactly 3:12 hours on March 14, 2026, the night sky above Doha, Qatar exploded. Two Iranian Fattah-2 hypersonic ballistic missiles screamed through the atmosphere at Mach 13, their terminal guidance locked on the sprawling nerve center of Udeid Air Base, the forward headquarters of United States Central Command and home to over 10,000 American operators. Qatar layered THAAD battery lit up the horizon, interceptors clawing for altitude in a desperate race against physics. Both missiles were destroyed. The detonations painted the night sky amber, but silence is not safety. On the radar screens inside the USS Abraham Lincoln Combat Information Center, 180 miles south in the Persian Gulf, every tactical board was already flashing red, because those two missiles were not the attack, they were the distraction. Iran had just executed the most dangerous coordinated strike of the two-week war, and the American fleet had exactly 9 minutes to identify what was actually moving beneath the surface before the Strait of Hormuz became a graveyard. This is day 15 of Operation Epic Fury, the most important United States military campaign since Operation Desert Storm. In 2 weeks, joint United States and Israeli forces have executed over 4,700 combat missions, obliterated more than 15,000 Iranian military targets, and reduced Iran operational ballistic missile launcher inventory from over 500 systems to fewer than 160, a two-thirds destruction that would have been classified a generational strategic victory in any prior conflict scenario. Tehran has fired back with everything in its magazine: 2,700 drones, 1,196 ballistic missiles, 28 cruise missiles in 14 days. The arithmetic is merciless. Iran is burning its arsenal faster than it can reconstitute it, but a cornered animal is the most dangerous kind, and at 03:12 hours on March 14th, Iran proved it retained both the capacity and the will to increase the conflict in ways that even CENTCOM most aggressive modeling had not fully accounted for. What you are about to witness is not a simulation. These are the real weapons, the real operational decisions, and the real countdown that unfolded inside the Strait of Hormuz this week, and the outcome will determine whether the next phase of this war is fought from the sea or from the ground, because 5,000 United States Marines are already en route. To understand why Iran targeted Qatar, you have to understand the geometry of American power in the Gulf. Sir, Udeid Air Base is not merely a military installation, it is the cognitive spine of the entire CENTCOM strike architecture. All B-2 Spirit bomber coordination, all F-35C and FA-18F strike package coordination, all KC-135 tanker scheduling flows through a LUDA Combined Air Operations Center. Destroy that node, and you do not just damage one carrier strike group. You blind the entire theater. Iran General Staff advised, according to intelligence assessments by Russian military doctrine specialists, has studied this dependency for years. If Bad Pachi 3 MSE and the David Sling Shield will intercept your first-generation ballistic missiles, then you use those missiles as a noise layer, an electromagnetic and acoustic smoke screen to mask something far more dangerous moving underneath. At 0308 hours, 4 minutes before the Qatar missile impact, a passive low-frequency array sonar node on the seabed near the Strait of Hormuz registered a critical acoustic event, the unmistakable mechanical signature of ballast tank pressurization. The signal was automatically ingested by the USS Abraham Lincoln SQ-89, a V-15 undersea warfare combat suite, and cross-correlated against historical URG submarine profiles in 11 seconds flat. Classification returned at 91% confidence. UNIS-class submarine, a 115-ton vessel, barely 29 meters long, capable of wire-guided torpedo strikes and contact mine deployment from within the shallow, murky thermocline layers of the Gulf that render passive sonar detection extraordinarily difficult. Iran had timed the Qatar ballistic missile launch to generate a wall of electromagnetic and acoustic chaos, flooding every AESA radar and sonar operator in the fleet at the precise moment the submarine crept to attack depth. Simultaneously, 3 Zolfaghar-class fast attack craft cut their AIS transponders and accelerated from Kishim Island in a spread formation vectored at 58 knots directly into the outer escort ring of the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group. Each vessel carried for Nasr anti-ship missiles, a subsonic-seeking weapon with a 35-kilogram shaped charge warhead capable of penetrating destroyer-class hull plating. The trap was set, a coordinated multi-domain ambush 15 years in the making, surface-fast boats from the northeast, a subsurface torpedo platform from the southwest, and a ballistic missile saturation event as the opening act. What the URG commanders believed was a perfect kill chain had one fatal flaw. They had never actually faced the ASPY 6 V1 air and missile defense radar in a live combat environment. At 0317 hours, the USS Gravely DDG-107 executed an automatic threat prioritization cascade under Aegis Baseline 10. The SPY 6 radars, with its 35 decibel gain advantage over the legacy SPY 1D, had already established firm track files on all 3 Zolfaghar craft through the sea clutter that would have blinded any earlier generation system. He, the tactical action officer, did not request permission. Under CENTCOM updated rules of engagement for Operation Epic Fury, any URG vessel conducting a coordinated approach on a United States carrier within 12 nautical miles, with fire control radar active, was authorized for immediate kinetic response. At 03:18 hours and 43 seconds, 3 SM-6 dual-eye rounds left the gravely forward Mark 41 VLS cells in a 1.8-second ripple sequence. At Mach 3.5, flight time to the Zolfaghar formation was 22 seconds. The first two vessels were destroyed outright, the third was disabled and dead in the water. Its hull split by proximity fused detonation 11 meters off its port bow. The Nasr missiles they had intended to fire never left their rails, but the real threat was under the water. At 03:19 hours, the UNIS submarine executed its attack window. Two SET-72 wire-guided torpedoes left their launch tubes and a fan spread, targeted on the USS Abraham Lincoln projected position at an estimated time of intercept of 7 minutes. The SQQ-89 system had already computed a firing solution from the initial classification. The problem was geometry. The submarine had positioned itself inside the 30,000-yard torpedo danger radius, the threshold, at which countermeasures lose their statistical advantage. And raw physics becomes the only variable. Every second of hesitation increased the probability of a catastrophic hit on a 100,000-ton nuclear-powered carrier with 5,000 sailors aboard. The decision fell to Rear Admiral Christine Walsh, commander of Carrier Strike Group 9. She had 4 options and 3 seconds to choose. She selected the one that left no exploitable signature on the electromagnetic spectrum and no ambiguous debris field for Iranian information operations to exploit. She ordered the SH-60R Seahawk helicopter already on station overhead to drop a single Mk-54 mod to lightweight torpedo program not to destroy the submarine, but to detonate 40 meters ahead of its bow. The resulting cavitation pulse would rupture the vessel forward sonar dome, sever its SET-72 wire guidance telemetry, and force an emergency blow to the surface. At 03:21 hours, the Mk-54 detonated. The 2 Iranian torpedoes, now running blind without wire guidance, diverged from their fire control solution and exhausted their fuel harmlessly in open water. The submarine broached the surface 800 meters south of the carrier group inner screen, listing badly, its crew abandoning ship into 29-degree water. MH-60R thermal optics recorded every frame. Iran had fired its most advanced coordinated subsurface ambush in operational history. It had been stopped in 4 minutes and 18 seconds. Before the adrenaline in the Combat Information Center had even faded, word arrived of what had already happened 4 days earlier in the Indian Ocean, an event the Pentagon had held under operational security until this moment. Do you believe the United States response in the next phase will remain at sea, or are the Marines the signal that a ground chapter is coming? Tell us in the comments, because what happened in the Indian Ocean on March 4th changed the rules of this war permanently. On the morning of March 4th, 2026, a United States Navy Virginia-class nuclear fast attack submarine tracked an Iranian YUNIS-class frigate, a 1,500-ton warship that had recently departed a naval conference in India and was transiting toward the Gulf of Oman at 14 knots. Naval intelligence had assessed that this vessel had participated in coordinated sea mine-laying operations targeting commercial shipping lanes in the Gulf, a deliberate economic warfare tactic designed to spike global oil prices, pressure Gulf Arab states to distance themselves from the United States-Israel campaign, and impose strategic paralysis on Western energy markets on the order of Commander United States Naval Forces Central Command. The Virginia-class submarine fired a single Mk-48 ADC APOD-7 heavyweight torpedo. The weapon tracked at 55 knots across 6,400 meters of ocean before impact, and the YUNIS-class frigate sank in 11 minutes, taking 180 personnel down with it. The Sri Lankan Navy recovered 32 survivors. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirmed the sinking the following morning at a press conference where he held up periscope camera footage of the strike. His words were measured, deliberate, and surgically chosen. Yesterday in the Indian Ocean, an American submarine sank an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. It was the first time a United States Navy submarine had sunk an enemy vessel by torpedo since August 14, 1945, the final day of World War II. The message transmitted to every naval commander from the Strait of Hormuz to the Gulf of Oman was absolute and binary. The open ocean is not a sanctuary. American submarines are already there, they are already tracking, and the next order can come at any moment without warning. By March 13th, the operational ledger for Iran had become devastating by any analytical measure, over 15,000 Iranian military targets obliterated. Ballistic missile launcher inventory reduced by 2/3. The Parchin weapons complex, the Fordow enrichment site, and the Irg Space Force command infrastructure outside Isfahan reduced to smoking rubble documented by commercial satellite imagery that any civilian with an internet connection could access. The Kar Island oil terminal, Iran primary export hub, processing over 90% of the country oil revenue, was struck repeatedly by United States B-2 Spirit bombers operating from Diego Garcia, methodically stripping Tehran of the financial oxygen that funds the entire warfighting apparatus. IDF drone strikes had penetrated Bayzi militia positions across Tehran itself. The 400th wave of IDF strikes on Iranian territory had been executed. Between 4,000 and 5,000 soldiers had been eliminated. Hezbollah, firing in coordination from Lebanon, had launched over 200 missiles at northern Israel. Every single one was intercepted and destroyed by the combined Arrow 4, David Sling, and Iron Dome architecture before a single warhead touched Israeli soil. Tragedy also struck the American side. On March 13th, United States Central Command confirmed that 4 American service members were killed when a KC-135 R Stratotanker refueling aircraft collided with an FA-18F Super Hornet Block 3 during night operations over western Iraq. It was the largest single incident loss for United States forces since operations commenced, a sobering reminder that in a theater executing thousands of missions at a tempo unprecedented in modern American military history, the line between combat, attrition, and operational accident is thinner than any doctrine acknowledges. Their names were not yet released pending family notification. They died in service of a mission that was reshaping the entire strategic architecture of the Middle East. Into this burning theater, the United States made its most consequential commitment yet. On March 14th, the Department of Defense confirmed the deployment of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit aboard the USS Tripoli LHA-7, a 45,000-ton amphibious assault ship carrying F-35B Lightning II aircraft, A-1Z Viper attack helicopters, and a full Marine Air-Ground Task Force capable of executing opposed shore landings, helicopter, deep raids, and sustained strike operations from international waters without requiring host nation territory. Alongside the Tripoli, 3 Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers surged simultaneously from Diego Garcia and Bahrain. Total United States Marine Corps and Naval Infantry forces now approaching the Gulf exceeded 5,000 operators, enough for a ground phase that no ERG general in any Tehran bunker could dismiss as a diplomatic signal. President Donald Trump provided the strategic intent in 6 words that echoed from Tel Aviv to every Iranian command post in the region. We will hit them even harder next week. The question that 174 nations were asking by the evening of March 14, 2026, was not whether Iran could absorb more strikes, the empirical answer to that was already visible in commercial satellite imagery, smoking ruins where missile factories had stood, craters where the ERG proudest deterrent infrastructure had been. The question was whether Iran's supreme leadership, now operating from hardened underground command bunkers, possessed either the rational calculus to seek an exit or the ideological conviction to fight until there was nothing left to expend. The missile strike on Qatar answered that question with brutal clarity. Iran was not looking for a diplomatic ladder to descend. It was looking for escalation rungs it had not yet climbed. It had targeted a nation that hosted America's largest regional air base, a nation that had attempted to position itself as a neutral mediator, a nation that had opened back-channel communications attempting to broker a ceasefire. Iran had fired on that mediator capital city with ballistic missiles. The message was received by every government in the Gulf simultaneously. There would be no neutral allies in what was coming next. The USS Tripoli F-35B aircraft were on deck, engines warming. The Marines were staged in their well-deck assault craft. The Virginia-class submarines were already positioned at every choke point. Between the Gulf of Oman and the southern Red Sea, and the USS Abraham Lincoln strike package was airborne before Rear Admiral Walsh had finished her evening operational brief. The Strait of Hormuz had become something it had never been in recorded history, not a commercial artery, not a contested zone, but a defined kinetic battlefield with a countdown that no diplomat in any capital had found the courage or the leverage to stop. The sea does not forget what happens beneath its surface, and what was coming was not a negotiation. It was a reckoning. What do you think? Is the deployment of 5,000 United States Marines the final signal before a full ground phase? Or is CENTCOM still holding its most decisive card in reserve? Tell us in the comments below. And if you believe this tactical breakdown exposed what mainstream media refuses to show you, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Trust me, you will not want to miss what comes.